All right. Hi, everybody. We're back again with Excess Exceed, the show where, despite all logic, I keep getting experts to keep spending their time teaching me how to play an ever increasing number of Exceed characters. Today, I'm sitting down again with Bana, who did not learn his lesson last time, to teach me about Ragna, Season Five's Red Shoto. Um, Bana, thank you again for sitting down with me. I really appreciate your time.
No, it's great to be here. I enjoyed talking about the last character. I'm sure we'll have a good time with Ragna.
Sounds great. I'm looking forward to it. So, quick disclaimer, as always, before we get started. Number one, we're going to be talking about playing to win here on this show. That is not the only way to play Exceed. Exceed is fun. Play Exceed for fun. If what we are talking about does not sound fun to you, if the lines we're describing don't sound fun to you, please play in a way that you do find fun. Not only will you enjoy it more, you'll also stick with the game longer. You'll get more practice in, and that'll make you a better player overall anyway. Playing for fun is playing to win, as long as it keeps you playing. Second disclaimer, we're going to be talking about things in pretty absolute terms, as always, on this show. This is always correct. This is always incorrect. There's always a caveat next to that. I like to think that I've selected some people who know what they're talking about. Bana is a very informed opinion on how to play Ragna. That said, he is one opinion among many. Especially for a character that's kind of flexible like this. Please keep in mind that we don't know everything about this character, and we would love to see some lines developed that we don't know about. So if you think we undervalued something or just misrepresented something, let us know. Play Ragnar yourself, find your own lines, and get back to us. And get on my show. I'm starved for content. Um, yeah. With all that said, Bana, tell me about this angry man.
Now, the angry man. Well, he's mellowed out over the years, but I mean, Ragna won't need too much explaining. He's a very much. You described him as the red Shoto. A lot of Shotos in Exceed just tend to play just regular, fundamentally good Exceed.
Hmm.
I would describe him as a character that's like he's solid, but he never crosses over into the realm of unfair. So you just play a regular Exceed with him, and you'll do just fine. If you look at his ability, which is just hit gain life, it kind of informs you that you kind of want to be striking and trading with this character there.
Right.
Hit gain one life means that like if you end up in the what's it called the war of attrition where all you're doing is trading slows with each other or something to that effect, you just win there because you die slower than the opponent.
Right. So
So
a
like
a term we use
ideally,
sometimes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just saying like ideally, like you kind of want to be in those sorts of spots where you're just brawling, just
Right.
because over time, the life gain means that a lot of the reward favors you. But yeah, that's really it.
Okay. So, like a term that I hear thrown around a lot in Exceed circles is Delta, which I think is power plus armor,
Yeah,
and that
yeah,
is basically like the represented on your card the life change over the strike, right? Like
yeah.
so focus deals has 4 power and has 2 armor, so it has a delta of 6, right? Um,
Correct. Yeah,
should I be thinking about Ragnar's ability as kind of just adding 1 on to his delta most of the time as long as he's hitting?
yeah.
Okay.
So long as you're hitting, yeah, you're improving your delta by one. That is if you're less than maximum health, because if you're playing a perfect game, this ability reads nothing.
Right, gotcha. So
You cannot go over max health.
I'll never use this ability
Yeah.
then.
Clearly, yes, we will
Yeah.
play a perfect game. We will
Yeah.
win every mix up, and our opponent will never play sweep at
Yeah.
range one.
I'll just 30 my opponent. It's fine. Um
Mhm.
okay, so that's the plan. I'm using just kind of like basic fundamentals of Exceed. I'm playing the game and I'm just playing the game a little bit better than my opponent because I'm trading a little bit harder.
Correct.
Okay. So I mean after I mean for people who are maybe watching these cherry picking lessons based on characters they want to see. The last time I had Bana on the show was talking about Hazama, who required a lot more explanation than that. Um,
Hmm.
but a lot of Hazama's game plan by the end of it boiled down to just play fundamental exceed with this extra bonus thing on top of it. It's just that his bonus
Hmm.
thing was a little bit trickier. So is Ragna kind of a similar like you know, you're not trying to set up crazy unbeatable things. You're not trying to like maintain a very complicated engine. You're really just playing the cards in front of you.
So the thing about the key contrast between like Hazama and Ragna is at least Ragna has stats, so
Sure.
you can like unlike a Hazama who had to just by default play good exceed in terms of the strike angle. Ragna can play good exceed from basically any angle. There is a boost, you know, a whole boost area of exceed that Hazama kind of had to ignore just because he had no stats.
Right.
Whereas with Ragna, you can like actually play stats and go, all right, we're gonna make this strike unbeatable, and you're gonna really feel it because my delta is better than yours.
Right. You're just gonna be able to kind of overwhelm them with aggression. So
Correct.
so I want to be striking all the time, or a lot of the time, right? So
Hmm.
if I'm boosting, it's with the intent to strike so that I get uh my life gain. It's not
Hmm.
optional. I'm just getting this all the time. So the
Yeah.
play pattern that Ragna is kind of engendering is uh, either be striking on my turn or be boosting with the intent to strike soon, right? I'm not
Yeah.
turtling. I'm not doing anything else. I'm really just trying
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
overwhelm.
You're
Okay.
not going to. You do eventually want to. You want to cash out sooner than later, just because. While I said Ragna has stats, he's not like the best at it. So
Right.
it's if you know if you give your opponent too much time, they are going to be able to answer what kind of setup you're trying to throw around. Like he is a Shoto after all, so it means like he's got a lot of well, maybe not necessarily like it's a thing for Shotos, but Ragna all feels a bit like a jack of all trades in that manner,
Mhm.
and he can do a lot of things just not he doesn't excel at like everything there. So he's solid, but you're not gonna overwhelm people with a specific line, I would say.
Okay, that makes
So
sense. So
you gotta be
I
flexible in that regard.
flexible base things around what my opponent is doing and answer their threats
Hmm.
rather than try to enact because my game plan is simple. My game plan is hit man. Uh,
Hmm.
and they're gonna maybe they're doing something complicated and that'll inform my game plan. But at the end of the day, what Ragnar wants is just damage and life gain.
Yeah, that's all you want to do. You want to punch people, and ideally you'll be surviving at the end of it.
Right. In terms of sort of like on the overall spectrum of Exceed characters, is Ragna among the easier ones to pick up and play?
Oh, I would most certainly say yes. He's probably the easiest in season 5. You could make an argument for some of the other Shotos, but like, a lot of people recommend the Ragna box for a reason, and that's because you know what, Ragna's a pretty easy character and a pretty great starting point.
Okay,
So
cool. So especially people who are new to Exceed in general, this is a good character to start to learn some fundamentals with.
yes,
Cool. All right. So do we want to go into the kit?
yeah, we might as well go into the kit here. We'll start off with I guess what would usually happen like at round start here. So I guess we'll start with Dead Spike over here.
Okay.
All right. So Dead Spike here. In Exceed we have what we call the move don't move mix up at range 4. I think I'll just move these up a little bit so I can kind of demonstrate that. We'll just use our good friend Ryu like last time here. So
Sure.
like there's opening position, right? We
Yeah.
have things like dive. Every character. So yeah, the move don't move mix up is not not every character has it, but Ragna being a Shoto does.
Right.
You can actually initiate with at range 4. Um, Ryu has no gauge, so we don't have to worry about his fireball. But even then, it's not the end of the world. But
Because you have 4
so
guard. So
yeah, on all we do.
the reason you say that he can initiate at range 4 is that if so, for example, if this card didn't exist and I strike with Ragna and my opponent Ryu goes, okay, that's dive, and then they just play sweep, right? Like
Yeah,
every single time they trade up on that, and they don't even have to think about it. Uh,
yeah,
but this card, even its existence, even if I don't play it, means that they just can't do that for free. Is that correct?
yeah. That is correct. Yeah,
Okay.
that's what Dead Spike does. It says close on there, but because it pushes Ryu out as well on hit, you will always maintain range 4 if you want to. So
Okay. So you never have to
yeah,
get hit by sweep from range 4 at least.
correct. Yeah, and I would even call Dead Spike here the king of the range 4 mix up in terms of season 5 at least. Like, there's a lot of characters with this dynamic of I can threaten a projectile that doesn't come in.
Right.
Ragna's just has the one with the most power printed on it. This has freaking 5 power. It
Right.
does a
I mean,
lot.
most of the time, like I dive in and I'm doing 5. To use Ryu as an example, I Hadoken and I'm doing 4. So
Hmm.
Dead Spike is on equal playing field with dive in terms of its payout.
Yeah,
Okay. Um. So and then obviously, so that's specifically in opening positions. Is this something that I'm really hoping to only play at range 4? I'm seeing there's other numbers on this card. Where is it good?
yeah. So I would say so you play it at range 4, where it's like the most safe. It's feasible to play it at range 3 as well. Like you have better things here. I would say, but like in a pinch you can play it at range 3. It
Right.
just now it doesn't really because it says um you have to close one now. And range 3. Like if they do play sweep, well,
Right.
now you're kind of like in this position and you get counterattacked. But you have your ability that says gain 1 life on hit. So
So
long as you're,
things aren't so bad.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Um.
this is feasible. I would say 2 is probably like the worst range to really play this. It does hit, so like you can, and if you have nothing better to do, you can. But I would say it like the true reason you probably want to play it like closer range is at range 1, and you're thinking, why would you play this at range 1? It's got a hole at range 1. Oh, it's
Yeah.
because there's a normal called cross
Called
that people
cross.
sometimes
Sure.
want to just try to leave with. But
Right.
because you have 4 guard, you can use this as a wonky cross counter. So
Okay. So
um
like a lot of kind of rangy normals, this pulls double duty as a projectile answer and a cross counter. Then
yeah,
it's
that's
kind of
right.
Tatsu like in that way.
Hmm.
Um. So and at opening positions, um, when I'm threatening this card, it's only speed 3, so their answer to it is probably their own copy of dive, but that means that they need to
Yeah, that
play.
opens them up to your dives.
Sure,
So
because they're defending on curve, which is always slightly risky to do.
mhm.
So all right, so but they have answers, but it's an important part of the mix up. That makes sense.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, speaking of dives, we might as well go to our other dive. Like we got Hell's Fang here.
Oh, sure.
Um, yeah, it's closed 3 instead of advanced 3, but that's actually something Ragna appreciates a bit more, just because it means that Ragna's threatening a wider range band than dive does,
Right. You could
and
play it at 2, you could play it at 1, and it would still hit.
yeah, correct.
Right.
So, no, I mean, like, so once again, it's the safest out here, but you can feasibly play it closer, especially if you back it up with a boost.
Yep.
And then this one also gains advantage. So you get, I would say, a bit more reward than even dive, even
Right.
if you're like a little short on damage. Push 2 is a little unfortunate. It means that if the opponent accidentally wild swung their spike or something, you do end up trading. Whereas most like
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, because
fast cards you will usually beat it, but
yeah,
once
the
again, not the end of the world. You can make that up.
right, because you're dealing 4 damage and getting 1 life back. You're actually trading fairly evenly at that point.
Hmm.
Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
that's
it's pretty
so
even. Yeah.
I have to remember to add that delta. So it seems like, I mean, 2 cards so far, both of them have pushed. Um,
Hmm.
is Ragna kind of comfortable at mid range? Is he kind of throwing big rangy normals instead of rushing into range 1 to beat people up?
So it's gonna really depend on hand composition. Ideally, you want to start out with like striking with these, but sometimes you have like hands where these aren't in. You just don't have them.
Right.
In which case, yeah, it might be just better to run in and start your offense just because range one's the trading range for exceed usually.
Yeah.
So like people say, oh, I mean, there is a misconception going around that Ragna's best range is two, just because if you look at all his attacks, that's kind of like where they'll land.
Yeah. Pretty much everything
Uh,
hits here.
yeah, everything hits there.
Right.
But just because everything hits here doesn't necessarily make it, I guess, optimal. Like usually, I mean, if we'll go over this later. Just we'll find that a lot of Ragna stuff is optimal at different ranges. So as options drop, like his best range kind of like changes
Yeah.
as the game goes on. But like if you're you're have no idea where you want to stand right now because I don't know, you have a complicated game state.
Mhm.
You're actually better off at range one than most other spots, just because then like you have your failure state's actually lower, just because we can say stuff like I guess Blood Scythe here, it does hit at range 2, but is it really going to hit at range 2? Probably not. Not with that one speed. They'll probably
Right.
like people might accidentally just beat this by like wild swinging spike or something. So
Right. Sure. So
better to like
in the same way that like focus or sweep is best at range 1, this is best at range 1 too.
yeah.
Okay.
I mean, since we're talking about it, we might as well move on to Blood Scythe here.
Yeah.
We said Ragna wants to trade. We have an all right trading card here in Blood Scythe. Like this. I mean, it's kind of like a mix between a sweep and a focus a little bit. Like it's got a lot of guard. It's got higher power, so you hit and you trade. And the extra gauge is also pretty good with this there. So,
Right.
um, yeah.
I feel like
Not much else you can say.
whenever I'm seeing 5 on his kit, which has been twice so far, and by the way, normals too
Mm,
for his character ability. But whenever I'm seeing 5 on this kit, I find myself automatically filling in +1 because of his life
mhm.
gain. Because that's the delta,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I also need to remember that that doesn't matter for breakpoints. Like, yes, this is sort of like in terms of value, it's like 6 instead of 5, but that doesn't mean that when I'm hitting with it, I'm breaking a 5 guard attack.
I
Like,
mean, so like, yeah, like I call this kind of like a bad slow. You say like, oh, it's at 5, and even though the delta 6, it doesn't even hit breakpoints. It's also speed 1. Like
right,
this thing's not breaking anything.
sure.
Even if you do like go, hey, let's hit the breakpoint of 7. You're not outspeeding sweeps, so you're not going to like break it and go, I've won cleanly. Like the best you can hope for is to like win
Is
the
to
speed tie
is
against focus.
to trade up or something, and even then, that's not,
Yeah,
if you're Ragnar's trading up anyway, so that's
yeah,
not
yeah.
actually that notable for him.
Yeah, so like yeah, you just use this as a trading tool. Like like just give up all your hopes and dreams of I don't know grafting enough power on this to break anything. It's with one
That's
speed, it's
yeah,
really not going to happen.
that's really not what it's for. So I mean, the comparison between uh this card and sweep makes sense. In the focus comparison, is it just the 1 speed and also sort of like the economic reward of
Yeah,
uh
it's yeah, like it's sweep in terms of range just because it hits 1 to 3. Like in
right,
terms of like I guess like it doesn't have the offensive application that like sweep does, which is why I compare it to focus there.
Sure.
You'll initiate with focus occasionally, but you don't initiate with focus with the intention to win the strike at all, right? You use it
Right.
because
You're,
you
it
just maybe want to keep tempo up, and it's a safe attack to play.
Sure. No, that makes total sense. And similar thing here. Obviously, you can also like, you know, get out of the corner with it and
Yeah,
things
you
like
can get
that.
out of the corner. You also need to be careful because you sometimes you throw yourself into the corner with it.
Right.
But it's sometimes you got to do what you got to do. So
Right. So I'm also noticing that like uh all of his specials affect positioning in some way or another. Like this advances, this closes, this pushes and closes. This
mhm.
advances, this pushes. So he kind of have difficulty maintaining a specific range? I mean, not that it
He
particularly
kind of does,
matters,
yeah.
because he has fairly wide ranging attacks. It seems like, so maybe that's okay. But I'm not
Yeah,
I'm not
so
saying that he's similar to like Mole Knight or Vega or somebody who are like depositioning themselves all across the board. But he is kind of micro spacing himself every time he's attacking.
yeah, so there is definitely an aspect to that. Yeah, because he's moving and pushing and doing all that, you can find yourself in a spacing that's unideal after a strike. So that is something to be worried about there.
Okay.
I mean, usually you can cover the gap with normals, so it's not like the worst thing.
Right.
And also like you might notice there's like a lot of push effects on Ragna. Like there is a sub theme of him trying to carry you towards the corner.
Sure.
And like if your opponent is in the corner and you play just the full blown trading game, positioning stops mattering at that point.
Right.
So like the ideal state is Ragna slowly pushes you towards the corner where you can't escape and then just wails on you.
Right.
But a savvy opponent will understand that and take measures to prevent that. So
Right. And play
you
play
need
the
you need to be
footsies game
wary.
with him.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So that's Blood Scythe.
Yep.
All
All
right.
right. Well,
And so
Blood
we
Scythe didn't need much explanation just
yeah,
because it's pretty simple. But all right. Did you have anything else to
uh not
or any
not
questions before I move on here?
not so far, no. So but like so far we've got like safe mid speed, on curve kind of pokey shape and then a slow counterattack. So far
Yeah.
kind of a balanced kit.
Yeah, balanced kit. So let's throw in something above curve into the kit just to kind of round out the kit shape here. We have Ragna's most famous card, Inferno Divider.
Yeah, this
Um
is a lot for a
yeah,
a
it's
DP.
yeah, it is it might be the best DP shape in season 5, though it's not the best reversal in season 5. But that's outside the scope of this talk. So um this attack really does it all. Like ideally you want to initiate with it just because you're threatening like an above curve attack at 5 power. Like usually DPs cap out at around 4.
Sure.
Like so 5, and with your ability there, even if like your opponent does sweep you, like it's not the end of the, well, I mean, this is a 4 special, so like you're not very happy if you get
Right.
swept, but in
But I
terms
mean,
of like
it,
trading, like you're actually coming out pretty even there. So
sure, and in kind of in the same way that that like uh +3 power matters a lot more than +2 power on in a lot of cases in Exceed, just because it hits those breakpoints easier.
mhm.
Five in some ways is much better than 4, because when you staple on +2 power from, for example, Fierce, now you're hitting 7, which
Mhm.
is that breakpoint. So
Oh yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
it
No, if you can graft like power onto this and your opponent passes back to you, like it is party time. You
yeah,
you are very happy.
yeah, above curve uh offensive shapes to confirm a payout or something seems very good. I guess that's why it's a force special, right? That
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
you're getting all this value out of it. At the same time, though, if it's an above curve shape, I feel like I want to be playing this on defense to stuff out my opponent's approach. So is there kind of a tension there
So
where I'm trying to hold it but also
there is a
play it?
bit of a tension here, yeah. There is a
Right.
tension here, yeah, like, just because it is a DP, it means there is, like, the natural inclination to play it defensively.
Yeah.
Um,
Or to
Sometimes you kinda
hold
just
it over
have
my
to.
opponent, right? Like to make
Yeah,
them afraid that I have it.
yeah. So, yeah, like, this is Inferno Divider will be a skill tester, like, if you're just thinking about Divider in one inflexible way, like, you're gonna not do as well with Ragna here.
Okay.
Like, you have to understand, like, where the situation seems to be leading, and, like, how you're going to, like, use your tool, like, engineer a winning state. So, like, that's gonna because those questions have varying answers, it means the use case for Divider is gonna change, right?
Right.
Like, if you're using it on defense, you're not getting the most value out of it. Like, in a way, it's like your opponent's, like, removing 2 power from.
Right.
So, if all you're doing is playing this on defense, you have not used Divider to its full potential there. But
Right.
at the same time, you can't just, like, always mash it. Maybe, like, in certain game states, you don't care about holding this over your opponent's head, and you can just mash it and just threaten to kill them.
Right.
But, there'll be a lot of games where just because you use your dividers early, your opponent has nothing to worry about from there, and you'll wish you had kept one. So
Right. And then
it's
they can push their own kind of 6 speed offense on. I mean,
correct.
axe kick on Ken or something like that suddenly becomes a lot more
Yeah,
free
yeah.
once Inferno Divider goes away.
Mhm.
Okay. So it's something that I want to use as an attack, but also keep to threaten using as an attack. Um, what and also use it on defense and also use it on offense. So
Yeah,
that
it
there's
like,
there's a
you
lot.
if you had, like, 8 copies of this card, you'd be a lot happier just because it does so much.
Yeah.
It does so much for Ragna. So, like, it's your most valuable card by far.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so we'll talk about, like, we've talked about Ragna's most valuable card. I guess we might as well talk about Ragna's quote unquote worst card.
Sure.
I say it's like his worst card in air quotes, just because, like, trying to use this as, like, a random strike, this attack kind of, like, accidentally fails a lot of the cases.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in, like, range 3,
They
um,
assault in and you
you know,
miss.
yeah, they assault and you miss, they dive in, you miss. If you accidentally play this on defense, like, they spike you and you're sad.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of, like, accidental fail cases for Gauntlet Hades to, like, reliably use it as, like, a mix up. I
Right.
find, like, if you're gonna mix people up, there's probably, like, you're better off with normals or something.
Right.
But this attack, despite, like, having fail cases, it provides a lot of extra utility here. Um, it's got 4 guard and it's got movement on it. So there's gonna be, like, games where, say you're, I guess Ryu here is like, I'm gonna play the Hadoken game. Well, I mean, Hell's Fang's not gonna help you, even though it's on curve.
Yeah,
But
because Hadoken is
no,
way
this
above
attack
curve.
does. It can tank. Yeah, it can tank the projectile and move you in.
Move you in
Even if,
too.
say, Ragna's, like, completely, like, out of range,
Sure.
you know what?
You
Like,
make
you're
up some
not gonna win the
ground.
strike anyway. You might as well make up ground. Yeah.
Right,
So, like,
sure.
it's in strike movement, so it's good there. Like, safe in strike movement if all you
Yeah.
care about is movement there.
Yeah.
Um, there's even so, like, it's got utility there. And you know what? It is a source of ignore armor, like, at the end of the day. I guess, the reason why I was saying, like, this just accidentally loses is, if your opponent plays a sweep, this only ignores armor, so you're actually trading down even counting for UA.
Right.
But you know what? Sometimes you just need to ignore armor if your opponent's in the corner and they have, like, a bunch of blocks and they're threatening to, like, you know, I know you have divider that you're threatening me with. I'll just block it, and then that thing will be down, and I don't have to worry about it anymore. You can just
Right.
play Gauntlet Hades instead and just make
Yeah.
them second guess playing block.
And in situations where they're like Ragna's opponent being in the corner is not particularly out of the question because he is carrying
Mm-hmm.
them there, and he might find himself in this situation a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So it sort of makes that kind of natural mix up between Divider and Gauntlet. Um, in terms of closing out a game, like Ignore Armor is awesome, but
Mm-hmm.
I want when I'm closing out a game, I want Ignore Armor on something fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does this have utility as a game closer?
I mean, so because it's not fast, it's like an opponent who refuses to just get ignore armor can just like play against it.
Yeah,
So like we were saying like we're holding this over the opponent as a threat. Like
right.
this also gains utility as like a way to threaten the opponent's like safe options, quote unquote. So
Sure,
like
yeah,
if the opponent they're at on their last legs, but they have their blocks up, and it's like you're in the situation of every exceed player eventually like has to deal with, which is, man, I'm so close to killing you, but you have block, and once the turn passes back, I'm in danger.
yep, definitely.
This this attack will go a long ways to at least like make them second guess themselves.
Right. So
So like,
they can't just play it for free. I'm just like with
yeah,
yeah, you're right. Just like with Inferno Divider, it's just for armor instead of speed. Okay,
yeah.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
it's there to threaten that situation, not so much to mix up. Because, like I said, it doesn't actually do a whole lot against a lot of normals. So
Right.
yeah,
And
like
also like so is speaking of not doing a lot against a lot of normals, the 4 guard on it does not actually seem that like short of playing it at range 1 to beat a grasp or and that's a
I
read,
mean,
right?
I mean, yeah, like if you're in this situation,
Yeah,
like
and
you're not
really,
even gonna beat
yeah,
grasp anyway.
that's very
So
true. They get to pick your position. Um, so is the 4 guard kind of another cross catcher then?
you can use this as a cross catcher as well. I
Right.
was just about to say, so, like, yeah, so Ragna has a lot of ways to beat cross at range one there.
Yep.
So if
And
you're making the read that they're crossing out, and you just need, or like you just have this in hand, and you're thinking, well, it's not gonna happen much else anywhere else. You might as well play it. So
right. And as you mentioned in the the conversation about dead spike, a lot of times a cross catcher and a projectile counter go hand in hand. This is not
mhm.
you didn't call this a projectile counter necessarily, but it does have a use just moving you in when you're at range and kind of
Mhm.
de-escalating a zoning situation. So there's
Yeah,
kind of a
yeah,
synergy there too.
yeah. You'll be using this a lot against a character like New,
Sure,
where
you're
they're just gonna like
you're
strike at long range, and you just have to make up ground somehow. So
you're regularly here, and you're pretty much fine with taking 4 or 5 damage, but you got to get to here.
I mean, even if you're not fine with it, it's gonna happen. So
Yeah,
make
that's true.
peace
So
with it, right?
become fine with it really quickly because it's happening right now.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay. Um, so that makes sense. So in terms of the special kit, uh, safe-ish mid-speed cross-catcher projectile answer, uh, kind of side grade to dive, counterattack, uh, big dumb above curve
Reversal.
option
Yeah.
with a lot of power budget put into it that probably requires a lot of care and sort of ignore armor movement option threat.
Hmm.
Okay, and everything that he's doing is gaining 1 life. Um,
Yeah. So
is
long.
is
Yeah.
he kind of a speed sensitive character? I'm noticing that a lot of his stuff has a decent
Yeah.
amount of
You'll.
guard on it, but I'm seeing like 3, 3, 4. Like he's not incredibly fast.
Yeah. He is. Yeah. Aside from like DP, he's not exactly a fast character, so he is speed sensitive. So, um, like I would say, like he's not like completely weak against cross, just because at range, like if you feel like, oh, my opponent's gonna try and cross out and catch me, or
Yeah.
like at
He
range 2, like you can
he
either
he
like
has
check it with DP if you really,
he has answers.
yeah. Yeah, he has answers. I mean, this one's better at like range 1. I mean, you can just chase down at range 2 if like that's all you care about. And if you're at range
Right.
1 and they cross, like at least you can actually like call it out.
Right. You can make the read.
So like yeah, the real hole like emerges at range 3, where like he has no range 3 speed 5 option.
Right.
So that means like it probably, yeah, we might as well go on the tangent of like what Ragna's most important normal is, which would be his assault, if I can find it. There it is. Um, I mean, since we're on the topic, we might as well talk about one of the ways to counterplay Ragna, which is you play Spike at range 3 against him.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, on
well,
initiation,
maybe not
especially.
in this position. Yeah,
Right. But on
like,
initiation,
'cause
like
yeah,
beats this, uh, beats this because beats Hell's Fangs because it pushes, which is super
yeah.
funny.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, like, yeah, he pushes with Hell's Fang, and then
Yep.
it trades. So,
Yep.
I mean, like, it's you've kind of won that strike, Ragna. I would say, like, if he can do this against Spike, just because this is one of the few ways he can even like quote unquote trade with Spike. Like, he's kind of happy to do that,
Right.
but
Oh, and he
from
hasn't.
your perspective, like you got it. So
Yeah, and he hasn't traded down. I got to keep remembering that he's getting life from this,
yeah,
so he's actually trading
yeah.
even. Um,
Yeah, but I mean, this is a bit of a risky read too, right? Because like, Spike is good. You can also threaten with with a dive of your own, and then like the options you have, like now there's like no option, right?
right. So maybe even
Like
he's even
nothing works.
yeah. So both spike and dive, both of your opponent's mid speeds are a little bit free. So
Yeah,
defending on curve to try to catch out what they're probably hitting you with is might be the play.
yeah, it might be the play. I mean, and once you enter that like dynamic, suddenly now your opponent, like if you're playing against an opponent who knows this secret sauce of, I'll play your mid speeds at range 3, what's Ragnar gonna do?
Right.
And you're like, okay, I'm gonna represent the assault on defense. Then suddenly like it opens you up like a lot more to them assaulting you, and now you're like extra not happy.
Right. And or any sort of any there's plenty of good
Hmm.
on curve range 3 specials in the game, and
Yeah.
your opponent. I mean, the fact that you just mentioned that he doesn't have one, most characters do, right? Many characters have an assault like,
Hmm.
and they can leverage that on him. So I guess the secret
Yeah.
actually is just to not stand at range 3.
You ideally don't want to, but at the same times, these tend to be kind of slow. So if like all your opponent is gonna do is like end with assault, like that's another thing they can just do is go, I'll just defend on curve.
Yep.
And it's gonna beat like most options. I mean, like, if they run into like your blood scythe, well, technically they lost the strike, but
Right. But,
that is the price you pay for defending on curve, right?
sure, and,
So
and if you're initiating with blood scythe at range 3 so that they can defend on curve, you're opening yourself up to the possibility of. I mean, you just talked about how this isn't a particularly good offensive card, and that means that you're running that risk yourself.
yeah. Yeah, it makes life a little risky for Ragnar, that's for sure. So
Yeah,
like you gotta like understand like which side of the mix up you plan on doing, like
right.
where your position's gonna be if you lose the mix up. Once again, just you gotta figure out like, how do I play good exceed here?
Yeah. Is it more common than against other characters for Ragna's opponents to initiate, or I'm sorry, to defend with a spike? Because
To
other
defend
than
with the spike.
yeah, which is I like unless you are calling something out, unless you're sort of on that third layer of Yomi, that's normally not a particularly great idea, I don't think. But short of Dead Spike, I'm seeing like you initiate with this at range 3, Spike beats it. You initiate with this, Spike
Wow.
might
Well, yeah, that one. If it might, but like
might beat
probably
it,
not. Like
probably not. This one probably
you
does.
can
So
trade. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
so
You.
so it,
I mean,
it
you at least trade too.
yeah, so is it still a read on their part to defend with Spike? It's better
So
for them to
I
initiate
would
with it.
say defending with spike is probably like you probably never like defend with spike against anyone else.
Mhm.
Ragna, you might occasionally want to just because it might work out.
Right,
So like the use case for defending with spike against Ragna like is higher,
right.
but
Still not
the
ideal.
thing is, it's still not ideal just because if Ragna, if Ragna might initiate with his spike, and then you just feel like an idiot.
Right,
Um, he might just go, you know what? I'm playing layer 1. I'm gonna play my assault at range 3 just because I'm Ragna. If you played a slow, so be it. I trade down 1 against focus and sweep, but
right.
that's okay. I'm at range 1. We're gonna start playing my counterattacks at range 1 with my advantage or something. So like Ragnar really appreciates initiating with assault as
Mhm.
well. Once again, like Ragnar has a premium for speed, so like you really need to value these cards. But yeah, like if you think Ragnar wants to step in and just play the range 1 game, then yeah, defending with spike doesn't help you at all, right?
Gotcha.
So it's like a matter of going, well, like you're gonna see like where does Ragnar want to use his assaults? That's kind of gonna be the key question.
Yeah,
Is he gonna just like mash this, or is he gonna try and defend with this? And that's the thing you're gonna have to like understand based on like your opponent's tendencies or like which Yomi layer you're on.
yeah,
So
sure. But they're both powerful options for him. Assault is an important card for
mhm,
him in general. It sounds like.
yeah,
Okay. Any
it's
other
it's very important. Yeah.
any other among the normals? Any other particular interactions? Even among the boosts that are he tends to I don't know uh parry more than block because he has life gain or something like that. Anything like that?
Hmm. I wouldn't really say so. Once again, we've talked about how Ragna is kind of a generalist. So, when it comes to normal interactions, it's not too special. You usually just want to use normals the fundamental way. You can
Sure.
use
You
your dive if you don't have, or if you want to just, I don't know,
you know,
get
you pl-
in, or
you play neutral with
you
your
run the mid
boosts.
speed mix up.
You've got season 1 through 5 boosts. You can do all that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, yeah, you play like you cross when you have to,
Sure.
you run when you have to, you tech when you have to, you defend when you have to. A lot of stuff is just play fundamentals.
Sure.
I assault's like the biggest highlight just because, there's a hole in his kit that assault covers.
Right.
So it becomes extra important.
Right.
But then like everything else is its own, like just you just plays normal exceed at that point.
Right. And for the normal boosts, like I'm thinking uh defend becomes useful for things like this and this.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh
you can use defend to make this a lot safer to
sure.
use, which is
Power,
good.
fierce clearly becomes pretty great for this. Um
Yeah,
uh I mean speed if he's speed sensitive, light can
yeah,
shore up some of that stuff.
yeah, yeah. Light tends to be pretty good because it will shore up your lack of speed. The issue with light is it's a tech target, especially against Ragna. So
Yeah.
it's sometimes a little difficult to use. Also, Ragna likes trading at range 1, which Sweep does
Sweep
very
is great
well.
for it. Sure,
So
yeah,
like it's I wouldn't say like, oh yeah, you value light so much more because it like solves your problem. It's another one of those. Well, play fundamentals. You if you think you need light to really make sure your attack lands, you play it. And you just got to be careful about whether you can afford to have it teched or have the opponent play a counter light on
sure.
you. So
It's interesting that Ragna, who is such an easy character, or not an easy character, a easily understandable character, that also kind of means that it's difficult to give like a step by step guide with him, because a lot,
mhm.
sort of like with Hazama, a lot of the advice is like just play good exceed and use your
Yeah, yeah,
tools as you need them, and he has the tools and this is how you can use them. So we're not advocating for like a specific like
yeah. It's
grasp should always be fierce because it's so good on Inferno Divider. Grasp is sometimes what you need to close out a game.
Yeah,
So
sometimes, yeah, and
yeah,
you know what? If you insist on playing the range 1 game, like sometimes you just need to threaten, hey,
yeah,
I'm playing sweeps all the time, or like blood scythe here.
yeah,
That means your opponent eventually goes, I'm gonna try and cross out, so you gotta
or
catch those
yeah,
with your grasp.
or dive over you or something to get out of the corner.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
totally. Okay, that makes sense. So again, just good fundamental exceed.
Hmm.
Do we want to
Yeah, it's
cover
not like a say a it's not like a grappler where like you can just say, yeah, just run a range 1 every time.
right?
I say Ragnar likes range 1, but he's not a grappler, so if you're playing against someone like Zangief, like this is a bad idea. You in that case, yeah, like run the gamble at range 2 at that point.
Sure. So like the triage of his ranges sounds to me something kind of like if you've got Inferno Divider, 2 is amazing. If you're
Hmm.
cornering your opponent, 1 is amazing. If you're playing your advancing stuff where a lot of your stuff hits, 4 is amazing. 3 is usually not, unless you are you know playing general exceed mix-ups.
Yeah, yeah, if you've got like your range 3 cards in hand, then you can stand at range 3. But Ragnar's kit in general doesn't
Yeah,
uh like help with that.
sure.
Once again, Ragnar, a generalist, he's going to rely on normal some of the time, which means it's not incorrect to stand at range 3. It's going to all depend on what you
Yeah,
have.
yeah, and using your strike movement to set up the range that you want, taking the move action if you need to get the range,
Hmm.
all that stuff. So, and yeah, and I mean, the question or the answer to the question of when do I do all these things, it sounds like for all of them is when he needs to.
Yeah, yeah, that is the problem,
Yeah,
right? It's because he's like a lot of stuff's kind of like good but not excellent. It means, you can't just like I mean, Divider has answers, so like you can't just jam Divider down the opponent's throat all the time,
yeah,
and Divider also covers certain gaps in Ragna's kit,
yeah.
so
You've only
you
got
don't
two
throw
copies
them
of
out
it.
willy nilly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I mean, this is the the Ragna guide, the official Ragna guides endorsement. Just do the stuff with your tools where it's good, and then we end the guide right
yeah,
there.
yeah.
We did it.
Yes, yes.
We're
Just
done. I'll stop recording. We're good. Um,
yeah.
okay, so that's kind of the attack half of his special kit. Do we want to cover ultras
Mhm.
or do we want to do
Yeah, we
boosts?
might as well cover ultras before we go into boost a little bit,
Cool, cool.
just because it's not like Hazama where it makes sense to kind of do it the other way.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have Devoured by Darkness. This is I would say, like on paper, it's only all right, but it's something I really like using with Ragna here, just because it at range 2, I guess it's another reason why sometimes you want to just stand at range 2. You can threaten between the 3 of these. You can, or like the success rate of Devour by Darkness is a little better.
Yep.
Um, just because it is under curve. But yeah, no, you hit with this. It's a delta of 9, just because you have your UA attached to this as well.
Oh, right. So hit
It's
hit gain 3, hit gain 1, and then you deal 5 damage.
Yeah,
Right.
so
Okay.
You do that. Like if you can EX this, it's even better because then now you're on curve and like the delta shoots up to 11.
11.
Uh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Um,
That's a lot.
yeah. Well, I mean, it might not be 11 if like you don't make use of the armor, but
Yeah.
10 or
Oh
11.
man. Oh, only 10 Delta, Bana. What a terrible
Yeah,
card.
yeah. Only 10. It's not
Yeah.
11. I didn't
Yeah.
get the full value.
Yeah.
I didn't defeat the buffet.
All right.
But
So,
yeah,
slightly under
y-
curve too. Is this something where I would want to paste a speed boost on it, or is it? I mean, the threat of Inferno Divider seems like they're likely to play a counterattack occasionally anyway.
like once again, it all depends. Like, is your opponent like a fast character? Yeah, you might have to just graph speed onto this.
Yeah, or defend from
Are you
spike or
really
something.
worried? Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Are you really like, are you really like if whiffing this like puts you in a really bad position, maybe you want to make sure it hits.
yep,
Once again, like there's no easy answer for how you're going to use this card. It's really going to be what you think the situation is going to be afterward.
sure.
Um,
What about
you
the
want to land this because occasionally, like despite having life gain, occasionally you will lose a strike just because we mentioned, likelihood of losing a range 3 mix-up from the opponent is high.
sure?
So you need to make that life back somewhere. So I try to land at least one of these a game, but it all depends. Sometimes you can't really afford to. So
Yeah, that makes sense. What about this? If you are in exceed mode, +0 1 range, +1 speed, like that automatically makes it above curve at range 3, which is great.
mhm.
But I, I mean, so that would require
7 gauge because you need 4
seven
to flip and
7 gauge over the course of a few turns at least. Like if I, a situation where I do flip, I won't spoil when we talk about his exceed side,
mhm.
but when I do flip, that gauge goes away, and if I don't have any over the next couple turns, at least maybe I can make up 3 and then hit with it. But
Hmm.
is that
Well,
is that common?
it's not really common just because I find a lot of well, it's uncommon because flipping with Ragna is kind of uncommon in itself.
Hmm.
But if you're thinking like, oh, is creating a situation where I get to like 7 gauge, is that uncommon? It's actually not very uncommon with Ragna just because he's got access to Blood Scythe here. If you land 2 of these, you already got 4
4 gauge,
gauge.
sure. Okay, so and
Um,
and a lot of
Ragna
these are
has
these are fairly consistent attack
mhm,
shapes. He's probably hitting quite a bit
yeah,
anyway.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and Ragna is like Ragna's resource game's actually pretty good.
Mhm.
So like he doesn't actually need to tap into gauge.
To like
Well,
to like
it all
CC.
depends on the matchup. There's going to be some game or some matchups where he does have to pull from gauge just to chase people down.
Right.
But if you're like not a huge evasive character, he's usually not tapping into gauge a whole lot. So you don't spend too much of it, meaning you will have like a good. I mean, there's been a few games where I just had like 7 gauge and went, well, I
Why
I
why
have
not?
7 gauge and not a whole
Yeah.
don't
And
have a whole lot to do with it because I didn't have any ultras in hand at the time. But
uh,
so like flipping and using this, like it's totally doable.
maybe a more
Just
kind of niche application though.
yeah.
Okay. And I think I know the answer to this, and we'll probably get to it. But you mentioned spending gauge to chase stuff down. If he's striking all the time, does he also need to ever spend gauge to reload? And I think the answer uh,
Not
is
real. So,
is
like, if you're
that
thinking about reload options, he's got like so many things for resources. I mean, this.
sure the
I
hit?
mean, this doesn't count it. Or yeah, I guess this does.
Yeah,
But yeah, like, so we've got a boost here that's to spend up to 5 life, draw that many cards, take another action. This is a really high tempo action.
yeah.
Um, the reason I want to like land this once over the course of the game is because I also like using this boost at least once over the course of a game.
Sure. So you
Um,
need the life to afford the card draw, and also one of these. The reason you're not hitting it twice is that one of these is going to be a boost.
yeah, something about of that. approximation at least. Yeah,
Okay.
so he's got card draw here. You can replace the boost on this with card draw if you feel like it. This
Yep.
is card draw.
Yep.
This is a very force efficient boost. So like like I said, he's got a lot of like using the change cards action with Ragna is not too common just because the card flow is pretty steady.
Yeah.
But
So
once again, it's not. This is not a not me saying never use change cards. That's in a like Ragna doesn't need to do that. No, there's going to
right.
be games where you're going to be down on life, and you go, well, if I reload, I might just die. So
Right.
you might be better off with
Or you need to dig for a specific option and your
that.
card draw is steady, but it's not fast enough. You're not seeing enough of your deck.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
and we might get into this when we talk about economy or maybe our astral.
Yeah.
Does Ragna tend to reshuffle in games, or do they not last long enough to for him to go through
I
his whole
mean,
deck?
so no, you'll probably reshuffle with Ragna. Whether you'll be able to do it or just draw through the deck is gonna depend entirely on the situation. There's once again like I mean, ideally you want to reshuffle just because this Astral is actually like really good. Um, but if like all your assaults are down or all your blocks are down and you just got to draw through the deck and force the reshuffle and dig as deep as you can, then you can't really afford to go for this. But
Right.
in the ideal Ragna game is yeah, you eventually get to this and at least you have another above curve threat to
Right.
hold over your opponent's head. So
I'm looking forward to getting to that. But so that's Devoured by
yeah,
Darkness. Sometimes use it in Exceed mode. Definitely use it on front side. Try to hit it. Get your life gain back.
yeah.
How about Carnage Scissors?
Carnage Scissors, you're gonna be less likely to use this, just because it's if you read it, it looks already pretty niche. It's it's below, well, yeah, it's below curve at 3 speed,
Hmm.
and it's got projectile immunity. But not everyone's a projectile character, so sometimes you don't really use this.
Right.
Though it is close 4, so against opponents that like just insist on leaving all the time,
Yeah.
it's a good way to get back in. If you're worried that they'll like somehow stun you out, you can always put like a defend on it or another boost we'll get to later that makes this unstunnable. And it improves your trading game. So
Yep.
don't just think of it as just a projectile counter. You
Okay.
can use it to chase people down if that's what you really need in the
Right.
moment.
And but at the same time, if they are if the character that you're fighting is someone who requires being chased down, does that mean that they're likely a projectile character anyway? I guess Vega isn't a
They're
projectile character. He
Yeah,
is the
it's not
projectile.
like there's some just runaway characters like
Sure.
I would say who was a good example? I don't remember. I almost wanted to say Rachel just because this came up against Rachel, but Rachel is a runaway sort of projectile character. I
Yeah.
just remember in that case, this was not used as a way to beat one of her Lobelias. It was used as a way to cover her escape.
Sure.
Just because if they know that this exists, then they're probably not going to just walk right into it too,
Right.
right? So.
They're not just gonna throw a fireball at you when you have it on lock. Although that said,
Hmm.
I mean a 2 gauge a 2 gauge ultra that is projectile immune does do things like this will come online usually before something like Metsu Hadoken will. So
Hmm.
you can kind of like play chicken with that, I guess. But if you're at range 4 or 5 against Ryu, you probably don't want to be anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you can play chicken with Metsuhado. That's probably better to do on offense than
Hmm.
defense, just because if well, this isn't supposed to be a let's analyze Ryu and Ragna's play patterns. But if I
Right.
were the Ryu player and my opponent had Carnage Scissors, I'd play Metsuhado at like range 3 and go nice
Right.
range 4 immune card.
Right.
You fool!
That's
But
very true. That's very true. Okay, so it's not just a incredibly niche like projectile answer the way that it might read. It's also for just chasing down an opponent and repositioning yourself. Um,
Hmm.
and it sounds like he's got the gauge. Sometimes you just play it. You're
Yeah.
if you're not holding it for something else. Cool.
Hmm.
All right. And we got to talk about this
Might as
Astral.
well move on. Yeah,
So
talk to the Astral. This is like honestly one of the most practical Astrals in season 5.
I'm
Um,
super excited about this, Bana, because the only two season 5 guides I've done at this point are yours on Hazama and Reggie with Platinum. And both of them were like,
mm,
don't play the Astral. The Astral's dumb. And this is my first practical Astral. I'm so excited about it
yeah,
because Astrals are
yeah,
big and scary and cool, and I like them.
yeah. So we already established that Ragna getting to 4 gauge probably not too hard. So
Yeah,
like you don't have to worry about, oh, like will I be able to pay for Black Onslaught? Uh, uh, unless once again, unless it's like it's matchup dependent. The answer is probably going to be yes. You can afford to play Black Onslaught.
right.
Whether you'll be able to use it, another story. But you know, and this is another. We already said, at range 3, Ragna, it's kind of like crutching on assault here.
Yeah,
Suddenly you have this, and you're very happy about it.
yeah,
Um, so like that's already pretty all right for like use cases. But I mean, for 4 gauge, 6 power, that
sure.
doesn't seem very exciting.
Yeah,
But
I
if you
mean,
have exactly 1 life, though,
right now.
it's 12 power.
So how often does that come up? Are you setting up that
Um,
situation as a kill shot, or is that just like, oh, I'm at 1 life, let's threaten this?
so so here's the thing. Setting this up is trivially easy with this boost.
Oh, so
Like if you have this in hand,
you control
yeah,
the life drain yourself, and then take another
yeah.
action
Like
and just kill them.
by the time you like have access to this, it'll probably be late game.
Right.
So yeah, like you usually be at like maybe like 6, 5 life or something. Yeah, you can just threaten like instantly. I
You
will threaten a 12 damage move on you. Yeah,
just close the game out right away and say you didn't think you were in the late game, but you are.
yeah, you can. So yeah, you can definitely do that. There's gonna be situations where you have an all right life lead, and one use of this doesn't get you to 1.
Right.
In that case, don't try to force it. Like
Right.
just using
Don't kill yourself to deal the damage. Just take another hit first and then do it or something.
yeah, like
Trade down.
4 gauge for 6 is kind of unexciting, but like
Right.
Ragna's fine with it. Just do it if you have to.
Right. You get your delta out of it. There's your hit effect to get more life out of it. You're still getting and it's as you said, it's shoring up your range 3 weakness. Um
Yeah.
so I'm assuming this is just parry bait then, for your opponent.
It is. It
Yeah.
is like that is the unfortunate part. If you have it and your opponent like has access to blocks and you're threatening this, yeah, they'll probably just parry it. But
Right. Nope.
once again, we're in late game. You
Yeah.
might be able to like end up in a situation where they just don't have access to the parry at that moment, and you
Yep.
can at least use
Yep.
this.
And I mean
Like I
if
said, it's a pretty practical astral. I've actually landed this quite a few times, so it's not like it's not like out of the question that you'll be able to use it. It's
right. And as a reminder for people who are not super familiar with season five's mechanics like Astrals, this is something that you only get when you trigger a reshuffle manually using the reshuffle action. So if you go through your deck on your own and just discard pile and uh, uh, piles up until you're out of cards, and then you reshuffle once, you don't get this. This is only if you take the proactive step to take a turn to get your Astral in your hand. So with a character who is kind of tempo oriented like this, that might be a consideration, but it's actually one that maybe is worth doing, which is very exciting.
mhm.
And I guess I mean if it is a parry target, that's like one less copy of something else that they can't parry. Like I'm assuming Inferno Divider, but I don't know what
Yeah.
their other parry targets might be.
Well, it's all like usually it's between divider and like your ultras, but
Sure.
you know, Once again, just if you're Ragna, you're playing fundamentals. It means your opponent usually has to play fundamentals against you. So like their parry targets will vary over the course of the game.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. So that's the attack kit.
Hmm.
Any other considerations about the attacks before we talk boosts?
I think we covered like most of the applications on attacks here that I wanted to. So I guess we can move on to boosts. We already kind of covered some of it already.
Sure.
We might as well work our way backwards on this one. I guess we'll go with burst. Sometimes you just don't have 4 gauge and you don't feel confident that you'll be able to access it. Just in which case, yeah, if you have access to the astral, and you might as well just burst at that point, refill
Yeah,
your hand a little bit, and keep tempo going. Um, just like burst in any other situation, you'll find the use case for burst is the same
sure.
for like basically everyone.
And
We already talked about
uh,
the. Sorry, I interrupted you.
oh, I was going to ask. I mean, I think you're about to talk about the same thing. I wanted to know
Yeah.
because he has card draw from so many other sources. Is burst a little bit less valuable for him, or is it just still the same? Like burst is always kind of
So like
good.
it's less valuable because like the attack's more valued,
True.
but once again, if you're low on life and you don't have 4 gauge, then rather than play this, maybe just burst or something.
Yeah.
Um Once again, like, I say Ragna likes this astral, but just because, astrals tend to be finicky means, you don't always have the best case with them. So,
Yeah.
in that case, you just use the burst, find your cards, and just move on with your life, right?
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
we already covered the Azure Grimoire, so we might as well cover Ragna's other really great boost, Not Over Yet. The best case with this is when you can completely compress it. Your opponent's at range 1, you boost this, push 2 +2 power immediately.
Yep.
It's really good. That's another reason why attacks like Assault are really important to Ragna's kit, because they make his one of his best boosts really consistent.
Right.
This
Just
is,
now you're on curve. Take 6.
yeah, on curve take 6.
Yep.
If you EX Assault, like, then you're really happy, but
Oh yeah.
that's very expensive. Um, you know, it's kind of another reason why you want to have Assault open is, this is layer 1, right? Like, oh, he's gonna play the fast attack because why would you want to whiff +2 power, right?
Sure.
So if your assaults are down, suddenly the risk reward on this becomes harder to manage because your opponent can just disrespect you.
Yeah, they can figure
Um,
out what you're doing because one part of your mix up isn't represented anymore.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that
Uh,
so
before we move on from that, I actually did have a question about Azure Grimoire. Actually, a couple.
yeah, absolutely.
So one, how often are you spending the full 5? Is that the default play? Should you kind of
Oh
most
yeah,
of the time be doing that?
yeah, we kind of sped through that, so I totally forgot to cover that. I would say most of the time you're going to be doing 5, like 90% of the time it's going to be 5. Just because if you want to think about like the value proposition, this costs a force for the cost, and it's a 2 force
Right. So
item in that it's an ultra.
it's 3 force, uh, just to play it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's 3 force just to play it, so you kind of want to get that much value out of it. I mean, like it gives you take another action, which is pretty valuable in and of itself. So like, to say like, oh, this costs 3 force, like if you don't spend 3, you're kind of getting low value on it. It's not exactly accurate,
Right.
but like if you're going to like try and refill your hand with this, you might as well at least spend 3 for it.
Okay.
And I mean, once you've reached that kind of level, you might as well just pay 2 more and just get
Right.
the full value at that point.
It has like a used car salesman logic. It's like, can you afford to not spend the 5 life?
Yeah, that
Um,
is a good way to put it.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
no, there's definitely gonna be cases where you don't wanna spend 5, like, if you're kinda lower on the life totals, you're just not able to.
Right.
Sometimes like, I mean, you like going big hand Ragna is like totally feasible. So if you find like, oh, your hand's gonna be like really large after this, usually you strike and you keep the cards anyway.
Sure.
But
Because
if you're worried that, oh, maybe I won't be able to maintain the tempo the whole time and I don't want to just discard cards, then yeah, you might go for a slightly lower number. But
sure.
you know,
And
don't want to.
for people who aren't familiar with that term, by the way, big hand refers to you only check your hand size limit of 7 uh, when you draw a card at the end of your turn, which means that if you strike, it isn't checked. So you can. This is the. For more information on this, check out D's Guile guide that he recorded with me.
Mhm.
But the idea would be then, okay, I draw way more than my hand size limit, probably get some cool EXs along the way, and just with my take another action, I strike, and then next turn I strike, and then next turn I strike, and then eventually I'm going to get back below my hand size limit again, and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, yeah. You can do that with Ragna. Like, it's also like a good way to just open with Ragna is you pay 5, draw a bunch of cards. Now, like your hand size is at like 8 at that point, and
right,
you just go to town.
right, and then that also has kind of the niche
Yeah, yeah.
knock-on
It
effect of
turns on your UA
yeah.
like immediately.
Now you have a character ability. You don't have to wait to get punched until you can start healing. That's very funny.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. So prefer for action compression reasons. Prefer spending as much life as you can to draw cards. Hope to make it up anyway. But this is a very powerful boost that you should be using for reloads
Hmm.
or for
Now,
overloads. I guess like reloads
yeah,
implies that it's going to be the last card in your hand. You can go over if you want.
yeah. Like, I wouldn't really say you're gonna use it as the last card. Like, I usually find like I usually use this to dig rather than reload.
Yeah,
So like it really doesn't matter what the hand size is. I'll just well, I mean, if it's like too large, I won't. Like if I'm already at a grip of like 6 or 7, like then the chances of maintaining tempo over a larger course of time,
yeah,
decrease, right? So you don't
yeah.
want to like do it
Your
then. But if you're
your
like sitting at
opponent.
like 4 cards or something, like yeah, just use this. You're
Yeah,
gonna be at like 9, but
and that's
chances
fine.
are you're gonna strike from hand. You'll be at 8.
Yeah,
Worst
do
case
it.
scenario, discard 1. So like,
Yeah, that's not so bad. Okay, so super flexible, super powerful boost. Super powerful boost. Not over yet
yeah,
to set up your a lot of your big attacks. And,
yeah.
and and end a boost war too. Like I mean, if you're boost warring with somebody, you can tell them that you're striking pretty forcefully.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of like using this as like a boost war ender, just because usually if say like Ryu were in this position with I don't know, a Swift, and you go, all right, we're pushing you out and striking, like you haven't actually like improved your position. You've probably made it
Oh,
worse for
sure,
yourself,
because
right?
now they have speed, and it's not like speed is less good at range 1. It's better at range 3. You've just given them the range they might want.
Yeah,
I got
yeah,
you. Okay,
exactly. So
so
like
use it
this this boost is
as a neutral tool rather than or a punish tool rather than as a neutral back and forth tool.
yeah, I would say that's probably the best use is like yeah to try and punish people,
Okay,
because yeah like action compression plus 2 power strike is really good, but once again it like the big issue is it pushes the opponent out, so it gives them options to play against it.
sure.
Especially here if they decide I don't want any like was it? I don't want to deal with this mix up. I'm going to cross out. That always makes you sad, which is why
Right.
you usually want to play this closer to the corner.
Yep.
Ideally, like if you're like this is like one of the best places for not over yet because you go, all right, let's push you out. Now I have a very scary mix up.
Inferno divider. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Inferno
right. Inferno
Divider for
Hades.
7. You can
Sure.
Gauntlet Hades or
Right. That.
Spike, depending on like which one you have in hand. I mean, like because of the threaded divider, it also just lets you play whatever you want at that point. Like
Right.
sometimes you just don't have divider and you'll just play a slow.
And I guess also the threat of not over yet might discourage my opponent from, if I play light, for example. I know that sweep is important, and that's not a huge consideration for Ragna. But if I play light, for example, one thing that my opponent might do is move into range one, where that doesn't matter as much. Well, no, don't do that against Ragna.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
got,
you've given me Way of the Warrior, you
yeah.
fool.
You've given me Way of the Warrior. Now strike at range three. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah,
yeah,
so like
yeah,
yeah, speed becomes a little better because this exists in his kit.
right.
But once again, a savvy opponent will know that this dynamic exists,
Yep.
and if they see speed drop, you instead tech or counter or you counter boost with your own speed there.
Yeah.
It's a lot better than trying to play the go to range one game against Ragna, especially since like when it comes to like valuable boost to tech against Ragna, like there I mean there's like a couple, but like speed's probably like the highest priority to tech there. So
Sure, yeah, and I'm looking at some of these. Like, I mean, Azure Grimoire is an instant boost. This is a continuous boost, but it causes you to strike, so you generally can't tech it.
yeah,
His other stuff
generally
is,
can.
yeah, still options, but no speed boost except for light. Gotcha. Okay,
Hmm.
so that's the ultra
Yeah, and I
boosts.
mean, yeah, that's the ultra boost. We'll also mention that you don't have to like tunnel vision into this being, oh, let me I always have to play this at range one and never anywhere else.
Right.
Sometimes like you're in the boost war and you know what? Like you just want two power.
Sure, it's a slightly
I'll
more
just play
expensive,
this.
slightly more expensive copy of Fierce in that case.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, it's more expensive, but like it's not really more expensive like to actually play because it's you're only using a card. But in
Yeah,
terms of like I guess force efficiency, it is a little more expensive. But
sure. No, that,
plus two power is plus two power. It's
yeah.
still
If you need it, you need it.
yeah,
Yep, the Ragna tool mantra that we've developed over this guide. Do it if it works.
yeah. Do it if you need to. All
Yep,
right. I guess
pretty
we'll move
much.
on to we'll move on to the boost on divider on relenting here, plus one power and stun immunity.
Yeah,
Um, so this is another boost I was mentioning earlier that I said, well, if you really want to make sure like this hits, you
sure.
can graft this boost onto it, just because it's hard to escape close four, and if it can't get stunned out, then
Then
if
then
your
you're hitting.
opponent can't just yeah. So once again, like this boost is strong, arguably the strongest boost in his kit, but it's attached to the strongest attack in his kit. So
Right.
it's kind of hard to use, kind of hard to let go of this boost when you have this attack. Once again, it's not like the boost isn't unplayable because of it. There will be games where the opponent decides I am never going to deal with the divider. I'm just always going to stand at a range where I minimize its effects.
Right. Or
And
they
if
have
that's the case, like
an even crazier DP. Right. They've got some kind
yeah,
of
yeah,
eight speed option at two or some nonsense.
yeah, they have like an 8 speed option that they're lording over your head. In that case, you know what?
Stun
You're not
immunity.
getting any value out of this anyway. You might as well just use it for the boost at that point.
Sure. And you would advocate putting it on something like Carnage Scissors or
Like something that like really improves your odds of hitting. Like Hell's Fang's also pretty good just because this it closes three, which means the range band's pretty wide.
Yep.
Um,
Assault. And
Assault.
similar things that would help out with that defend would help out with basically.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's
And
it's it
he
yeah, it's
doesn't
just
have,
better defend kind of.
yeah, and he doesn't really have anything that like uh it hits a magic number 7 with plus 1 power, but if you do from like an EX attack or something, that's where you put it.
hmm
Okay. So that plus 1 power can be useful for that too. Otherwise it's just upping your trading game and giving you a better delta.
Yeah.
Okay. So that makes
All
sense.
right. All right. We might as well keep going with stat boosts here. We'll move on to the stat boost on Hell's Fang. Plus one power, plus two armor, and you can pay life to draw one. Um, like this is a adding another delta of 3 onto one of your attacks. So, it's you just use it on or you pair it with something that you think is gonna have a reasonable chance of hitting, like Divider or just any of your slows at range 1.
Sure.
Kinda like the regular old fundamentals of boosting and exceed here.
Yep.
I guess, once again, notable thing, you can spend 2 life to turn on your, ability right away here.
Oh,
Um,
okay. And that might be
yeah.
the time to do that because if we're talking about Azure Grimoire as being particularly efficient, 2 for 1 life to cards is quite a bit a worse return on investment than it would be from Azure Grimoire. Um,
Mhm.
is 2 worth 1 card?
It really depends on, like, the situation. Early game, the answer is yes. Late game, no. So, like, the mashing on draw for this, like, it's one of those, like, curves that are degrading, right?
Right.
You're, like, happy to do it early, not so much later on
Okay.
when, life becomes more of a resource you have to leverage.
So this could be a turn 1 or turn 2 play.
So maybe turn two. Turn one's a little more difficult because if you play this turn one, uh, like we mentioned, Ragna has his move don't move mix up. He wants to run at range 1 or range 4.
Right.
Like you've spent one of these, and like this is better as a way to initiate rather than defend if you're gonna play the range 4 situation.
Right.
So like you're turning on your ability turn one, but you're passing to the opponent,
Right.
and you've also dropped one of your Hell's Fangs. So as much as like it's we can turn on the ability, we will get temp or we will be efficient with our ability turn one. It's from a game pattern perspective, it's not as great. So
Okay.
it's like probably better to do this a little bit later.
So you establish your threats first, and then as the game is underway, you if you haven't been hit yet or something, then you get this, and also plus
Mhm.
1 armor, +2 or +2 armor, +1 power.
Yeah. I mean, like, worst case scenario with this, if you really need the card draw, like maybe the +2 armor will refund you
Oh, sure,
the life you spent for it, right?
sure, yeah, you're not getting hit as hard. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you just beat their strike, then you
Oh
that
no,
2
you
armor
beat.
didn't
Oh
quite
no,
do it for you,
you
but
beat
oh
their
no,
you
you
beat their
beat their
strike.
strike.
Yeah, how
What
terrible.
a tragedy. What a tragedy. Yeah.
No,
All right.
what we're gonna find out at the end here is like, okay, so Ragna wants to trade. That's how you started this. So never beat your opponent cleanly. Only ever trade with
No.
them.
Oh no! If like you want to at least win one clean trade with the opponent, because chances are your opponent's gonna win cleanly against you, like
At
over the
least a
course
couple
of
of
the game, at
times.
least one. Yeah.
Sure, that makes
So
sense.
you need to make up the like you're trading, you're gaining life, but if you're spending it, then like you're
Yeah,
not actually like pulling ahead on life.
right.
So like you might be in a sort of an equal sort of situation there for life. And if your opponent wins a streak, now you're behind. So you want to like engineer at least a spot where you can pull ahead once so that you can equalize things a little bit,
Got it. That makes
or at
sense.
least fully, right?
Yeah.
Um, anything else we want to go over before I move on to the next boost here?
No, let's do Nightmare Edge.
All right, Nightmare Edge. Plus, this is another like speed boost for Ragna. Well, I say another, but like it's his sole one unique to him.
Yep.
+1 speed's like all right. He'd rather have two just because it will like shore up the weaknesses in his speed band better
Yep.
than one does.
Yep.
But you take what you can get. Like it'll do the job well enough. Um, it also has push 1 or 2, so you can also establish a range you want after the strike. Like the most optimal thing to, I guess, or optimal situation for this boost is you boost it and you grasp their sweep all the way to range 4, and you're laughing all the way to the bank with that one. But
Yep.
a savvy opponent's probably not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
So
And obviously play it when you have something that can hit at range 4 other than the thing that you just put down as a boost, right? Like
yeah, yeah.
don't push them out without a way to keep hitting them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it depends. Like, if you don't have anything to follow up, if they do end up in the magical situation of, oh, we're beating sweep, I mean, it's probably all right to throw
Right.
them out at that point. But
You still beat sweep, right?
yeah,
Okay.
but like if it's ideal if you have like a follow up to it.
Right. And the +1 speed helps where +1 speed will help, which
Hmm.
is in marginal situations, but use it to confirm power, use it to set things up. But is this generally more an attack?
So it's like early game, it's an attack, but like as time goes on, like once you're getting to like the close range brawling spot, this starts to become a boost more often just because, I could call out cross from range one, but it's not guaranteed that it'll work, right?
Yeah.
So a more consistent tool would be +1 speed. Like, and even like I said, at range one, it's even fine just because, like you have the after or like the hit push effect on it, so you can establish a different range if you have to, or you can beat like a lot of slows aside from focus with it. So it's one of those speed boosts that is not completely you know uh, reduced in value from playing at range one. Also, if you play this and the opponent goes, I'll just wait a little bit, then it opens you up to not overeat it again. So
Right. Yeah, and now you've got +2 power, +1 speed, and punch him.
yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So then we
All
have
right. We're gonna
blood
go
scythe.
more towards the utility ones here now that we've covered the stat ones. I guess we'll start with Blood Scythe real quick here.
Yep.
Yeah, now close, draw one, hit, gain two life. So it's like a very force efficient source of like small movement.
Mhm.
Um, and then hit, gain two life is just always appreciated there.
Sure. Yeah, stacks with your ability, increases your
Yeah.
delta even more. So make sure you hit, right?
Yeah, you want to try and make sure you hit. So you want to like engineer a situation where, say, I don't know, you're at range three, you close in and then threaten with DP or something.
Yeah.
Um, because like this is it's force efficient, but it doesn't do a whole lot in terms of like high tempo plays. Like if you're like out here and you go in a range three, that's not really
Right.
ideal. Like I said, we've entered Ragna's not like maybe his worst range,
Yeah.
and
You,
like your
you'd rather.
opponent sees, oh, hit two life. I'm not letting you have that on your terms. I'm gonna
Right.
prevent that.
You would rather use it like you don't want to step in one step at a time on a zoner or something. You want to do a
Yeah,
bigger jump and then microspace with this boost later.
yeah, that's the idea with that.
Okay.
Um,
And because this attack is like slightly underwhelming, is this frequently used as a boost?
I say like this is slightly underwhelming, but once again, at range one, it does the job well enough.
Sure.
So like for me, I usually tend to find I'm using the attack more just because it tends to be safe at range one, and I can just throw it out.
Yep.
Um, but like yeah, if you're like in a situation like this, not a lot's happening. Like yeah, like this boost does do its job there. I'd say it's like about a 60, is it 60/40? Maybe slightly more skewed towards the attack, but like it's
Okay.
more
But
attack, but like boost is not. Don't think like the boost is bad for that
sure.
reason there.
Sure.
All right. So there's that. Here's another boost that kind of has a similar sort of dynamic. So here we go. We got now draw two, hit gain advantage. So now draw two. Like if you're in a situation where you want to prepare, you might as well just play this instead, just because
Yep.
it's the same amount of cards with a bonus you might be able to deal with. You know, like whenever I boost this, chances are my opponent will try to minimize the effects of hit gain advantage. So it's another one of those. Well, if you can engineer a situation where you can play a better defensive game, it's better to play this. But once again, it's a pretty good prepare action in boost form.
Sure.
So like you don't have to feel like you need to use the gain advantage. But I mean, still, it's still pretty good. Like, if you're at range one and you boost this, not like if the opponent wants to prevent you from using the hit gain advantage, they kind of have to strike at you at range one, and that tends to be pretty safe. So say,
Yeah. So yeah,
you can
you
create
can kind of
situations.
force him to hit you.
Yeah, you can force them to hit you, or if they just pass you, or like you're in the driver's seat now. You can just mash a strike at that point, and then you're going to gain advantage, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
you can like either follow up, can do whatever you want if you actually manage to gain that advantage.
that all works. And also, that like you said, that this attack is better than people think, but still not your number one priority. So this could be played as a
Yeah,
boost, maybe
yeah,
fairly
like it
readily.
tends to like yeah. This one's the boost. Like you play it a lot before the attack, and then like once you reach late game, you want to start holding the attack more to
Yep.
threaten
Closing the
a
game out.
lethal strike.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, so that is. Let's see. We talked about the cards. We talked about the boost. We talked about economy. What is the name of this game again? Exceed,
yeah.
I think. Let's talk about Ragna's Exceed side, because you sort of downplayed it earlier, and it sounds like maybe it's not, again, not his number one priority.
All right. So it's not his number one priority because of this thing called the overdrive trigger here. His is Ragna's here has like one that is arguably a downside. Actually, well, there is one that's very clearly a downside, and one that is arguably a downside. So like it's one, or take one non-lethal. So like you're paying 4 life to use this ability
Mm.
because you have 4 pips of it.
And for gauge,
Yeah,
right?
4 life, 4 gauge. I mean, the 4 gauge or whatever is like whatever. Like if because like the actual ability +2 power or +1 power. Sorry, if it were +2, that'd be crazy.
Yeah.
+1 power hit, gain 2 life. That's pretty good. Um, you have the other overdrive trigger of you may push one. I guess I called it arguably a downside, but because it's a may, it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Push one. I mean, Ragna, like push one, the idea is like, oh yeah, I'm pushing you closer to the corner.
Right.
But when you're in this mode, you don't really want the push. You just want to be able to confirm your hits.
You don't want to give them
Um,
more a head start
more,
on their run away from you.
yes, that is exactly correct.
Right.
So like you usually find you're not going to be using the push effect on this
Right.
unless unless you're in a situation where you go, I have to run the mix up. I have to go. I'm going to push you out and play my spike because it doesn't hit at range
Right.
one or something like that, right?
And
That's
also,
the
you can't really flip and then boost for the most part. Like, you better be striking
yeah, exactly. You have to strike, so you
to
can't.
to heal from you bleeding out while you're in this mode. And so
Exactly.
you also get, when I guess it's not quite as bad as we're saying about the exceed cost. When you exceed, draw one, close up to one, and strike. So that's a lot of action
Yeah,
compression right
it
there.
does have a kicker. Like so, the exceed doesn't have. I won't say it's like completely worthless, just because. Well, we'll get back to this action compression thing in a bit. But as you said, like this forces you into a I'm not really taking any other action but striking,
Right.
and because it's like +1 power hit, gain 2 life. It's a complete mistake for the opponent to strike into you because if
It
they're
works.
giving you extra
It works on their turn
turns
too.
of this
Yeah.
ability. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you just what you do is if Ragna flips, you just go, okay, well,
I
I
leave.
boost my assault and I leave, and I'm gonna force you to use turns where you can't
Right.
use your UA. So like that is the counterplay to that. And because the counterplay is like so obvious,
Yeah.
it's like not you can't really just rely on this to do things.
Right.
And
So so
like I
so
said,
you
because you're
so
bleeding out.
you need to set up a situation specifically where you're like, okay, I'm here right now, uh, and I'm gonna try to keep you in the corner rather than push you towards the corner, so they can't run away. But
Yeah, that's
even
yeah,
then,
that is
four
the
gauge is
best
a
way to do
lot.
it. Yeah, 4 gauge is a lot, but like I said, it's not like Ragna has a trouble getting to 4 gauge, so
Right.
it's not the end of the world. Or like getting to 4 gauge isn't such a big opportunity cost as say
Right.
a bunch of other characters.
Right.
Um, like I mentioned earlier, well, we covered like the huge weakness to this. So we have the kicker. The kicker is probably the most like valuable part about the exceed mode.
Right.
There are there are situations where, like, say you're in this situation, maybe not against Rio because he could threaten Hadoken, but I mean, you're Ragnar, you have answers to that.
Right.
You're in this situation, maybe you don't have access to this right now, and you go, well, I could spend a turn to try and walk in, maybe range 4, maybe all the way into range 1 or something, just to try and just chase down my opponent. Or you can just flip over, get to range 4 immediately, and then play one of your many cards that work at range 4
Right.
and like get in that way. And then at least that way, like, okay, well, if you get in after doing that, now the opponent's cornered. You have less options for escape, and now suddenly your like exceed mode actually has like a bit more utility there. So
Right. Then how
that
how
tends to be like most of the cases where I use this exceed mode is I can make use of the immediate, like, oh, I'll position with the exceed mode and strike.
right. Bana, how does advantage turns interact with the overdrive trigger? When I play assault with when I'm in exceed mode, I've spent an overdrive at the start of the turn. I now get a new turn and I spend another one.
Yeah, that's right.
Gotcha. All right. So
So like you can't
I,
extend it.
right. Okay. I can't get more strikes out of the deal unless I'm making my opponent strike into me somehow, and they just won't.
Yeah, I mean, you're still probably like you won't get a deal like an extension with your advantage, but because your opponent usually wants to run away from this
Yeah.
exceed mode, if you
It'll
have like
it'll
advantage, you
it'll
want to like.
keep them from disrupting it.
Yeah,
Sure.
exactly. So
Sure.
if you can also engineer a situation where you exceed and you can advantage chain, that's also a good use for it.
Right.
Also, like another another use case for this is it is an additional +1 power on just the card itself, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
There are situations where I've been like, okay, I have this. I mean, maybe I don't know if dividers maybe not the greatest example, but I mean it'll have to do. Actually, no, we'll use Devoured by Darkness. It's a better one. Um, let's say I had EX Devour in hand. It's 6 power. It's not gonna beat their sweep. It'll trade up massively, so you're still happy.
Right.
But let's say you're in a situation where you really just want to stun sweep.
Sure.
And like I said, Ragna has like a lot of gauge gen, so it's not unreasonable to say he might get the 7. Like you could do something like flip over or play EX Devoured by
Yeah.
Darkness, and now like you've reached a break point.
Yeah. What if you did like here? Hang on. Here's a combo that I'm labbing on the fly. What if you're like, all right, uh, uh, darn it, that's a now strike. I was getting it confused with Azure Grimoire take another action. If it was like this on your next action you exceed and you have your +2 power and then you do what you just did, but you can't do that.
Yeah, it's yeah, you
Yeah.
can't do that. It's so sad. I
Yeah.
wish I like there are so many times where I wish I was like, man, I wish I could flip, use this and this. That would be
Yeah, all
so
at once
good.
in
But
a big explosion. Yeah.
unfortunately, that combo does not exist.
All
I
right.
really wish it did, but
Doesn't
it
work
it
that way.
doesn't.
Okay.
I guess like we were talking about like break points and um in this. I mean, it does. I mean, like if you're already in this like already in exceed mode, and you want to take advantage of +1 power, you could do something like this as well.
Right.
That way, now assault has reached a break point as opposed to just trading even with sweep. But
Yep.
like I said, you already like for that you already have to be in exceed mode for it.
Yeah.
So, and
So
like I said, there's situations where that +1 power comes up and you want to do it. Like,
right.
mhm.
But so
But yeah, that covers
you
that.
would generally advocate then like exceed is like your third down on the triage in terms of what you're spending your gauge on after
Yeah,
your various ultras and just kind of the move action and basic like economic concerns, right?
that is my evaluation of it. Yeah,
Okay. That makes sense. And when you do have the option to do it, it's there and it's good when it is there, but you need to kind of find a reason to use it rather than just doing Devour by
yeah.
Darkness
It's
or
it's
Black
not.
Onslaught or
Yeah, it's
something.
not like some other characters where like the exceed mode either is the win condition or provides a lot of value.
Right.
Ragna's is just it's a tool. It's a double-edged sword, so you
Yep.
got to be careful with it. But sometimes the situation calls, and you can access it.
That makes sense. All right. So at this point, it sounds like we've talked about the Ragna things. Is there anything you want to add
Mhm.
to the list of his tools or anything that we haven't covered?
I believe I've covered everything I want to, but let me just do a quick once over my notes real quick before I make that conclusion.
Of course.
No, I don't think I missed anything.
Okay. And then real quick, we've sort of been talking about it this whole time, and certainly with the exceed mode, we talked about it explicitly. But so those are the Ragna things. What is Ragna's opponent doing to counter those things? And how can Ragna kind of play around those counters? Again, we sort of talked about a lot of this stuff, so but maybe just all in one place. Like what are Ragna's like kind of
Yeah.
weaknesses?
As so, going back to Ragna's weaknesses, we've established over the course of this lecture here. Ragna has like this hole right here,
Yep.
and only has assault to really like threaten or cover options. Just because everything else is very always
Speed
what would you call it?
speed sensitive.
Yeah, speed sensitive, unreliable.
Sure.
Um, So going to range 3 and like running that game kind of makes Ragna suffer a little bit. Ragna does like you can afford to lose a mix up here or there because then Ragna can attack you and he
Yeah.
can make up like the offense on his own terms there. But like generally, yeah, if you're like threatening something at range 3, Ragna has to make a risky call on what you're doing there, and you can kind of just ruin his life just by doing that.
Yeah.
Um, if you want to talk about some other things, like we've already said, Ragna's a generalist. Um, so if you're playing a character with like their own win condition, like Zangief here, where is he? Get out of here, Zangief. There we are. You know, if you're Zangief, just run your game. Just
Right.
go to range 1 and go, "Hey, I'm gonna demolish you at range 1." Just because it means like you're in a situation where your power is, or like your game plan stronger than Ragna. So
Sure.
if you're
Because
one of those characters that have a clear
yeah,
like end goal, you just try to force Ragna to run into that.
yeah, Ragna has a lot of end goals. He's a flexible character, but that means that all of those different branches that he can go down aren't quite as deep, right? He
Yeah,
he he he, he can't
he
quite
can
do it
reach
all.
like maybe a 7 on a scale of 1 or 0 to 10. He can reach like sevens in a lot of spots.
Right, but
So just
not
find the
10.
spot where you're, yeah, and
Yeah.
so find the spot where you're at the 10, and then you're gonna win,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
yes, once again, we're gonna talk about. I guess another way to like fight beating Ragna is like the big test is how do you fight against DP.
Yeah.
Um, fighting against DP, you can't just be scared of this forever. Um, and this is like one of the more easier DPs to, I guess, play against just because it does cost a force, which means you're like, if Ragna's not getting full value out of this DP, he's like costing him off resources.
Right.
So if you're like in a situation at range 2, like if you force Ragna to use the DP on defense suboptimally by like say either playing a sweep or something, like you've come out really far ahead. He
Right.
hasn't, you traded up. Ragna spent 2 cards. If it's like a sweep, then he's down even another card. And like this is now a divider that's 1 copy of divider that's down that you don't have to deal with later.
Right.
Even if say like you lose to divider on defense because you're like, this feels like a good time to cross out, and he catches you out of it. Um, Depending on like the situation, that might be bad for you. Like if you're really banking on having to build range, and just because Ragnar's mauling you at close range, that's bad. But if it's like a low commitment cross that you're just kind of throwing out, like that's actually not too bad of a loss condition. Like if you're still fine with fighting at this range,
Right.
because once again, like the whole point of like this move is it can be a really good offensive card, or it's a way to throw a wrench in the opponent's plan.
Right.
If
And
you
if
like,
you
if
got to
you
pick
lose
one.
to it by running low commitment offense, you're fine with that. It means like
Yeah.
now you can actually start setting up against Ragna.
Right. He can't threaten that too many times.
Hmm.
Okay. That'll make sense. All right. So
Yeah,
I feel
I
like
think.
the thing you said specifically about running your own game plan kind of applies to a lot of Shotos, where you're just saying
Hmm.
like they can't keep up if you're really in your bag.
Hmm.
Okay. Well,
Yeah,
cool.
that is a way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. So I think that that covers all of my questions about him. Anything else you want to add in, Bana?
No, I think that covered everything. Like I said, Ragna's kind of fundamentals based, so like the if you want to understand fundamentals, like there's resources for learning that sort of stuff.
Definitely.
Um, so like the better you have for fundamentals, the easier time you'll have playing Ragna. Um, so it really just boils down to that a little bit. Just try to play aggressive. If a lot of people coin like the term like play high tempo Ragna,
Yeah.
so like you want to like strike a good balance of like play strike often enough that your opponent can't really set up like maybe a boost situation or set up their game very well, but also you also need to engineer situations that favor you, like either with a not over yet setup or something.
Right. Because your tools
And
are good, but they're fair, right? And you might not
yeah.
be able to simultaneously deny them their crazy stuff while also getting enough stuff that will get you
Hmm.
the game without setting some things up of your own, presenting questions for them to
Hmm.
answer.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So like yeah, with Ragna you want to like we saw with his attack shapes kind of like range 3 kind of unreliable. So he's got a more question shapes than he does answer shapes.
right.
So you will usually want to pose the question to the opponent more often than not, because if they're answering their or question is a little difficult. So
Right. And
you probably want to.
pose them at a rate that they can't ask questions back. Just
Hmm.
overwhelm them with things that they need to respond to.
Hmm.
Makes sense to
Yeah,
me.
that's the ideal situation.
Sure. All right. Uh, Bana, once again, thank you so much for your expertise and for your time. I really do appreciate it, and I can't wait to have you back on the show again to talk some more.
Hmm.
And everybody who's taken the time to watch this, I hope it's been helpful, and I really appreciate your time as well. So I will see you for the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Hey, Ragnar is fun.
Play Ragna, he's fun.